Welcome back. Brain Thrive by 25. Lesson 4. This is going to be so interesting because you are going to meet the part of the brain that tortures you. And either because you have it working too hard yourself or you know someone who does. So here is an active view of a SPECT scan. SPECT is the study we do in our office. SPECT looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how the brain works. Blue is average activity in the brain. Red is the top 15%. So red is what's really working hard, which is typically in the bottom part of the brain. You can see in this person, their brain is really busy. You'll actually meet her later in this lecture. Today, what we're going to talk about is a very interesting part of the brain called the anterior just means toward the front, cingulate gyrus. And it runs deep in your frontal lobes, and I think of it as the brain's gear shifter. It allows you to go from thought to thought, move from idea to idea, be flexible. So it's involved in cognitive flexibility. So you're pretty good at weighing different options and going with the best one for you. It's involved in shifting your attention so you can go from this idea to that idea to another idea. Helps you see options, go with the flow, cooperate, get outside of your head and into the head of someone else. It's involved in error detection. So when it works too hard, you tend to notice what's wrong. And when it works in a healthy way, forgiving other people is easier. It's just easier to let things go. So the cingulate, your gear shifter, allows you to go from thought to thought, move from idea to idea, be flexible, go with the flow, get outside of your head and into the heads of other people. When the cingulate works too hard, usually due to low levels of a neurotransmitter called serotonin. So when serotonin levels go low, the cingulate tends to work hard, and then you end up with these kinds of issues. But if you notice the list, they're all about getting stuck on one thing or another. So it's like the gear shifter in your brain is sticky, and you end up worrying. What's a worry? Well, it's like you get a bad thought over and over in your head. You can be rigid, which means things sort of have to be your way or you get upset. And on the surface, it appears selfish, and it's really not selfish, it's just rigid. Inflexible. If somebody hurts your feelings, you hold on to it. So you can hold grudges. You can obsess about things. So a bad thought, really bad thought, over and over in your head. A compulsive behavior could be checking locks or not walking on cracks or washing your hands or taking showers in ways that are not reasonable. Addictions. What's an addiction? Well, you get stuck on smoking pot or drinking energy drinks or smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol. You tend to be oppositional, which means no matter what someone says to you, you argue with them. So you tend to oppose them. How I diagnose this in my practice is I ask kids, how many times out of 10, when your mom or dad asks you to do something, will you do it the first time without arguing or fighting with them? And if you say not very often, your cingulate could be working too hard. And people where this part of the brain works really hard, they see too many errors. So they look in the mirror and they see what's wrong with themselves. They sort of pick themselves apart. They look at their families and see what's wrong. They look at their boyfriend or their girlfriend, and it's like all they do is talk about errors or what's wrong. It's hard for them. It's like they have a little mouse in their head, and the mouse is on an exercise wheel, and the mouse can't get off. The cingulate, so AC stands for anterior cingulate, develops before your prefrontal cortex. And it's very active in teenagers and young adults, which is why we often hear, "Don't tell me what to do." Genetics play a role in the anterior cingulate. So if people in your family tend to have this issue, you're more likely to have it yourself. And we want you to stop and ask yourself, how often does arguing with your parents, teachers, boss, actually make things better? So I'm a huge basketball fan and go to a lot of Los Angeles Lakers games. And I watched Kobe Bryant when he was in his prime, and he would always argue with the refs. And I'm asking myself, and how many times did that actually change a ref's call? Not any. Zero. So you just want to ask yourself, how often does it help you? Because my goal is for you to get what you want, the good things that you want. I want you to match your behavior to get what you want. So here's actually a marital couple I saw where the husband had low activity in the prefrontal cortex, which we learned about last time. His wife had high activity in the anterior cingulate. And they just fought terribly. And I was the 5th marital therapist they saw. But I was the first one who actually looked at their brain. And when I balanced their brains, stimulated his prefrontal cortex, calmed down her cingulate, 25 years later, they're still married and they don't see therapists anymore because their brains work better. So if your cingulate works too hard, here the front of the brain is on the bottom of the scan, and white is the most active parts of the brain. It's just a different way our computer renders it. These people just automatically say no. Do you know people like this? No matter what it is you say to them, they say no or they argue with you. My dad was like this. No matter what I would say, he's like, no. Can I? No. But you didn't hear the question. Don't want to? No. So when I scanned him many years later, his cingulate worked way too hard. Road rage. So have you ever been in a car with someone and they just things happen on the road, right? If somebody accidentally cuts me off, I think to myself, you idiot, and then I leave it alone. Why? Because there are crazy people out there. But these people, it's like that bad thought, you idiot, you idiot, you idiot, you idiot, gets stuck in their head, and then they do something crazy or stupid to get it out of their head. This was actually a surgeon. He was an orthopedic surgeon, so it takes care of bones and joints, who got cut off by a kid on a freeway outside of San Francisco. And then he chased him with his car 8 miles west on one of the freeways, and he actually cornered him on an off-ramp outside of the city of Berkeley. And orthopedic surgeons have these long metal rods they put in your leg if you break your femur. That's the bone between your hip and your knee. And so he got out of the car with the long metal rod and bashed the kid's windshield in. And as he was chasing that kid, a highway patrol officer was chasing him and arrested him at the scene. And then he called my office. And why was he calling me? I was seeing his sister for obsessive thoughts and depression. And he's like, I think I need to be seen. I agreed with him, and this was his scan. His cingulate worked way too hard. PMS, I know some people don't believe in PMS, premenstrual syndrome. I have 5 sisters, 3 daughters, 14 nieces. I believe in PMS. And so the first time I heard, after I started scanning people, this woman actually attacked her husband with a knife 3 days before the onset of her period. And then she was fine. When I heard that story, I had to scan her right before her period, which is the image on the left. You can see her cingulate is up and her frontal lobes are down. That's the sort of holes in her frontal lobe. The holes indicate low blood flow. And then, like 11 days later, her brain is normal. So, yes, PMS can be a real thing, and for some people, sort of dangerous. So here's the scan we showed at the beginning. It's a 17-year-old girl. So I did a show that actually won an Emmy called The Truth About Drinking. And she's 17, she's drinking too much, she was running away from home, she's very oppositional, and you can just see her brain's on fire. Especially that line going down the middle is her cingulate gyrus, and the part toward the front is her anterior cingulate gyrus, so toward the front. So why does she drink alcohol? Because it calms her brain. So it's what we call self-medication. Now, it's not a good thing because it can cause a lot of problems in your life. And there are other things like meditation that can calm that part of your brain. She drank because she was addicted. She couldn't stop thinking about alcohol. And she drank to oppose her parents because she was naturally oppositional. But not because she wanted to be. That's really important. And I want you to think about this idea, because I've thought a lot through the years. Is her behavior will-driven, or is it brain-driven? Did she wake up in the morning and want to make her mother cry? Or did she want to make her dad frustrated? I actually asked her that question. And she's like, never once. But it just seems like I do it all the time. So her behavior was not driven by her will, by her decision to make that behavior. Her behavior was driven by her brain. And because no one had ever looked at her brain, no one had ever known that her brain was just working way too hard. This is a fun story. Here we flip the brain. So the top is at the top, the front part of her brain is at the top part of the screen. And remember, blue is average activity, red is the top 15%, white is the top 8%. This is an 18-year-old kid who came to see me. He is overweight, he was angry, he was oppositional, and he wanted me to prescribe medical marijuana. Now, if you know me, I'm not a fan because I've seen thousands of drug-affected brains, including marijuana, and they're just not healthy. But what I did is I gave him something called 5-HTP. It's the amino, you can get it at a health food store. It's an amino acid building block for serotonin. Because for him, he was so angry and so anxious and so upset, he smoked pot to basically go to sleep. And I taught him about the little mouse on an exercise wheel in his head, and it just would go over and over, telling him, about his worries and fears. And the other thing he used to medicate himself besides marijuana was sugar. And that's why he was really overweight, because sugar raises serotonin but makes you sick over time. On 5-HTP, he got so much better. But I talked to him about, I call it the stoned mouse story. I said, you have this mouse in your head and the bad thoughts go over and over, on, can't let go. And you smoke pot to get the mouse stoned so you can go to sleep. And he liked that analogy, and he thought, well, let's find another way to calm this part of my brain down. So it wasn't will-driven behavior. Ultimately, as you can see, it's brain-driven behavior. So some of the conditions that are involved with the anterior cingulate. When it's low in activity, people have low motivation. It's often what happens with marijuana is they develop something called an amotivational syndrome. They just don't care as much. Mutism, which means they don't talk as much and they don't move as much. But when the cingulate is high, they get stuck. And all these conditions, whether it's anxiety disorders, where they feel really anxious and tense and predicting the worst, post-traumatic stress disorder, they get stuck on a trauma that happened in the past, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, they get stuck on an obsessive thought or a compulsive behavior. Some eating disorders like bulimia, I'm too fat, and then they'll get stuck on making themselves throw up or taking laxatives, some addictions, and then people have oppositional defiant disorder. No matter what it is you say to them, they argue with you and oppose you, which is generally not helpful. So how do we help this? If your cingulate works too hard, well, you want to distract yourself. I always tell my patients, if you have a thought in your head more than 3 times, physically get up and go do something else, just to distract yourself. If you're dealing with a cingulate parent or you're dealing with a cingulate boyfriend or girlfriend or brother, don't ever tell them what to do. Because as soon as you tell them what to do, they're going to argue with you. So I always say, give them options. You know, well, we can eat dinner now, or we can eat dinner in 10 minutes. We go to the store now, or we go to the store tomorrow. What do you want to do? But as soon as you tell them what to do, they're going to be angry and upset. I always say, don't argue with someone who's stuck. Keep calm and don't feed the troll, you know, the troll in their head. I also have something called the bathroom technique. So if you really see somebody stuck and they're going on and I don't want you to argue with them, it's often good to just find a way to take a break. And if you say, I really want to hear what you have to say, but I have to go to the bathroom, nobody argues with you. Paradox, so you can actually tell them to do the opposite of what you want them to do. And, you know, just think of a 2-year-old. And having children and grandchildren, I know for most 2-year-olds, they just naturally tend to be oppositional. You know, they find the word no and they stay with it for about a year or 18 months. And so when my daughter, who was pretty oppositional, was 2, and I wanted a kiss, I would never say, please give me a kiss, because it'd be no. But I would say, you know, today we're not kissing. There's no kisses today. And, you know, within 30 seconds, she'd had to come over and give me a hug and a kiss. And you have to sort of think about the opposite of what you want them to do. Exercise helps so much because exercise boosts serotonin to the brain and calms down the cingulate gyrus. Journal. Whenever you're stuck, whenever you have a bad thought in your head, write it down. And then write down what can you do about it and what can't you do about it. It will help you so much to get these bad thoughts out of your head. Avoid automatically saying no. So just try to notice yourself and whether or not you have a tendency to do that. Now, do not go on a high-protein, low-carbohydrate diet. If you do that, you will focus more on the things that upset you. So more healthy carbs. So this is where sweet potatoes or hummus or blueberries or strawberries or oranges can be really helpful to calm the worries. Donuts will work, but they'll make you sick. So let's not go with the cupcakes. Fish oil can help, especially a component called DHA. Now, most really high-quality brands will have both EPA and DHA, but if you're more the worrier, try to get more DHA. Ways to boost serotonin. So saffron, another supplement. It's actually a spice, but now being sold in stores as a supplement. 5-HTP. Exercise, carbohydrates. And you want to make sure your gut is healthy. That's sort of weird. But your gut, your intestines, actually make more serotonin than your brain. So what does this all mean? Your brain can get stuck on negative thoughts or behaviors. Others can get stuck, but you can do something about it. Understanding this helps you take control. Coming up, we're going to learn more brain systems, what they do, what happens when things go wrong, and how to help them. We'll talk more about what hurts the brain, what helps the brain, and how you can literally change your brain and change your life.